Here we go. You're live. They say that you're alive. They say that you're here. Brothers, oh wow, that screen went dark just as the thing, so should move my thing. Brothers and sisters, welcome back to another Brotherland live segment. Here we are back on the Brotherland server. We're going to talk about some stuff. We're going to do some building, some management. If you look behind me, ta-da! So we did some work last time on the Sky Village. Yes, this little Sky Village that we got off camera. I did a little bit more work. As you can see, there's a giant red border that we're gonna fill in. And if you look over here, so let's there we go. There is a wall that we're building. So this is a little bit of a thematic what we're going for. We're gonna have on the grass tiles, we're gonna have a dirt wall. On the netherrack, the warped root tiles, we're gonna bring in some of that to show kind of that it's corrupted. I think we're also in the village itself. If the building is completely encapsulated in a tile that is grass, it will be normal. But I think if there's any moment that it overlaps with the warped root, I think we'll do a bit of that, you know, that blue wood feel. So it's gonna be kind of a combination of it all. But that's what we got. That's what we're at. Let's finish the border out. Then we'll finish the border wall, and then if we have time after that, we'll start planning stuff out and figuring out what villagers we want to put in here. Been a very successful little morning full of trading that I have done. We've gotten the armorer and the weaponsmith up to the top, so these will be coming to the shop odds and ends that I run in the main section. So there we go. If you spied the description, you'll notice something weird. It says mythology and mass production. The mass production is supposed to be a joke for anyone who understands. Let me just grab all of these. Yeah, I prepped everything. Everything is good, ready to go. So, yeah, we'll start out here by the gate that we built, and then we'll continue onwards. Mass production is supposed to be a joke because we're producing mass. So, here we go, mass production. Get it? Do you get the joke? Do you get it? And mythology is because I want to talk about some stuff that's been on my mind. I've been I've been listening to a book, actually, by Stephen Fry. I don't know if you guys watch any British comedy, but Stephen Fry is definitely one of the characters. Stephen Fry was originally, Stephen Fry did a segment with Fry and Laurie. It used to be like a... not really like Saturday Night, but like sketch comedy. It was a sketch comedy group that aired on television on BBC. Very wildly, oh man, it's already night. Wildly popular, very fun little bits. And actually, this was motivated through Facebook and the Facebook algorithm. I was watching an interview on the Graham Norton show, which is like the British version of any late night talk show. So they interview stars like what am I thinking of? Not Colbert. The Jimmy Kimmel. You know how Jimmy Kimmel Live, and they'll invite guests on, and a bit of Fry and Laurie. Yes, that's the show name. Kind of like Jimmy Kimmel, you know how he'll invite stars and then he'll interview them and he'll talk to them about it. Well, in the Graham Norton show, it's a little bit different. They usually have more than one star from different areas. So one of them will be an actor, one of them will be, a musician. It changes up every time, but nonetheless, it's a talk interview show. Yes, very British SNL. Although I would argue that Monty Python is more of the British version of SNL, because Monty Python had a bit more of the ridiculous sketch comedy than... But Fry and Laurie is the same way, yeah. Monty Python definitely had a bit more craziness to it. Okay, let me see where the middle is, because I want to make sure that once we get the middle, everything else will be good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. There we go. Now everything else can function off of this. So anyways, that's where the idea came from. There was an interview with him on the actual show, and he was talking about his book that he wrote. And I was like, Stephen Fry wrote a book? And I was like, oh, it's probably a comedy. Absolutely not. It was not a comedy. It was a book about Greek mythology. And he does a really nice job of explaining why he wrote it and, you know, what the importance is to him. A lot of it was to do with, what is it? He wanted to tell stories like the goddess Hestia in Greek mythology. So he would, Hestia. So this is just my time to share with you and retell you Greek myths that I've read about, because it's a fantastic book. If you want to read it, you absolutely should. You can get it on audiobooks. Again, I wish I was sponsored in this moment, because that would be amazing. I could be like, if you look in the description code down there, you'll get a free audiobook from Audible, and it'll be fantastic, and you'll really enjoy it. So, you know, go get that now. But I'm not sponsored, so you just have to go off my recommendation. You can get it from the library. It's not too bad. It's pretty affordable. Well, the library is free, so what am I saying? Anyways, he was talking about Hestia, and Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, which is not a goddess that we hear a lot about. The Big 12, she was part of the original Big 12. I need to make sure that I don't waste any of this bone meal, because everything here is methodically counted out. I crunched numbers ahead of time to make sure I had everything I needed. Anyways, he was talking about that in our generation, we've kind of lost this idea of passing stories along through passing history and knowledge along through the use of stories. So he wanted to write a book, and it's not, I mean, it's in terms of review of the book, it's very good. It's not dry. It's poetic yet also conversational at the same time, if that makes sense. So there are some moments where he definitely shows off his literary flair of, you know, how well he can write, and it reads very well. And if you get the audiobook, he reads the audiobook, so you can get kind of, you know, get it from the author's perspective as it was supposed to be read, because he wrote it, you know. He also wrote a book about a little known speckled bear in Peru, where we went on a safari and smoked the pipe. I have not heard of that book, but that sounds like a grand adventure in of it itself. I'll have to check it out. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh, the book. Really enjoyed what it is, because the part that really fascinated me, it doesn't actually, I mean, it covers some stories that are pretty well known, but nothing that you'd expect it to cover, if that makes sense. So, like, for instance, other resources for you if you wanted to look stuff up. There's a very modern telling of some Greek, I mean, because think about it, Greek stories are all around us all the time. We have, if you're a Broadway fan, there's the Broadway Hadestown, and it tells a story of Orpheus and Eurydice. It's a beautiful story, very well written, very, I wouldn't say conversational, it's told like a soul story, right? So they're going through and they're talking about, you know, this story, and they tell you from the perspective of kind of Eurydice and Orpheus together. I don't think there's really one major character there. I think they shared the spotlight pretty evenly. But that's a really good modern adaptation of the story of Eurydice and Orpheus. So if you like that story, check that out. There's also, I mean, it was popular to me. I don't know if it's still popular or if people still know about it. Well, they should still know about it. Percy Jackson by Rick Riordan was another good book series. It was definitely more of like teen drama So it was about, it was like a modern version of the telling of the Greek hero of Perseus, who goes on and, you know, I don't think he slays the Hydra, but kind of, yeah. So Perseus and that story and that adventure, as retold as Percy Jackson, and him being the, basically the modern equivalent in teenager form. And it's fun. I enjoyed what Rick Riordan did in his series, which was just completely take the gods and put them in the context of this reality and this timeline and this kind of world that we live in, of like, what would the gods look like in the modern world? Well, they would look like this. And then the series continues. The first book series of Percy Jackson is fantastic. Great. The Heroes of Olympus, it's 5 books, and I really enjoyed reading them when they came out. It switches narratives sometimes. It goes from Percy to other characters in the books, and you kind of get to see how the modern world makes sense through the eyes of a teenager in Greek mythological stories. So if you haven't seen or read well, I would recommend reading it, because the movies were good. I enjoyed who they cast, and I was very excited to see said movies. But then I felt they kind of didn't do it justice a little bit. It's hard to make movies, and it's hard to make movies work well that are based off of books, because books have so many more details, more developed character arcs. Not to say there are bad adaptations. I enjoyed the first Percy Jackson. It just wasn't exactly to my 100% like. I don't know how to say this without being mean. I liked it. I just didn't love it. But I hear, in terms of news on that, I hear they're making it a TV show. So they're gonna adapt it to be more of a TV show and make it run from week to week, which I think is a smart idea, especially for a book series like that, especially for a book series that then continues to 5 more books. So they had the Heroes of Olympus, and then they had the second series, which introduced, Romans and a bit of Roman mythology as well as Greek mythology, because the Romans just took the Greek gods and were like, this is ours now. We're gonna tell the same stories, but from our own perspective. That's where we get the names of our planets. And yeah, the names of our planets are actually named after the gods. Like Venus is Aphrodite. Venus is the Roman name for the goddess Aphrodite. And there's okay. Let me rewind. This the book by Stephen Fry does a really cool job, and this is what I've really enjoyed about it, of telling you and plugging you into why things in our everyday are named the way they are. It's so interesting. And it starts, and I was really surprised, because I thought it was gonna start, I didn't know where it was going to start. And then it starts at the very beginning of the entire creation of the universe, as according to the Greeks. And it is a fun journey to go on, because they talk about the primordial gods, and then the primordial gods and how they, populated the earth, and then the titans, and then the actual gods that come, and the mortals. Like, it's going through the entire. I'm almost done with it. I think I have maybe an hour left. Okay, it's glitching out on me. Now I can't see what happened. Load. So it does a really good job of just keeping you engaged and showing you just how much there is in that story. Okay, I'm just gonna go off of faith, and then eventually it will update, but we'll have to see how that looks. Okay, well, now I can't open my inventory, so we'll just continue talking about this other thing. I found that this helps if you run away from your problems. There it is. See? You run away, and then it will open and do what you need to. Now we're back to normal. And I can't open my inventory. Okay. Alright. Yeah, I really enjoyed the book, and I really enjoyed, just kind of all the information jam-packed inside of it. And my favorite were finding those pearls of, not really pearls of wisdom, but fun little quirky reasons for why things are named a certain way or why things happen a certain way. Like, for instance, there is a Titan, Gaia, Mother Earth, right? Gaia, Mother Earth. Oh, that's what I was gonna. Yeah, there's another. Yep, I have another thought. Let me tell you this story, and then I'll tell you the other thing. Gaia, Mother Earth. She's one of the primordial gods. She represents the Earth and is also on the Earth at the same time. And it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense if you don't think about it. So, she also has Uranus, which is the god of the sky, right? So, or not the god, the Titan, the primordial being of the sky. And there's a whole, I don't know if I should ruin it or if it's not. I mean, mythology is mythology. It's not like there's a show coming up or anything with it to where you'd be spoiled if it happened. Anyways, Uranus eventually gets, through means, gets sent to the place between Gaia and Tartarus, so like the underground of the world. And it happens to him, and it's not willing. He doesn't willingly go there. He gets usurped and then sent down there, and so he's very angry. He's very upset, and he sits. And this is the beauty of that literature, of the expression, right? He sits in the earth. He's so fuming with anger, he's just writhing in anger, and he's compressing all of his divine power into the rocks around him, and he's shaping these rocks, and he's forming forming and shaping his power into these rocks to one day unleash his wrath upon the people of Earth, because he feels he's been ignored, and he feels unjustly imprisoned. And who would dare try to unleash the power of the gods, the power contained within these stones buried in the earth, filled with Uranus's rage, which we call uranium? Which is one of the coolest descriptions in the book that sent shivers down my spine when I read it. I was like, oh, that is a beautiful way of saying that story. So that's where we get uranium, is because, well, according to Greek myth, we get uranium because Uranus, the god of the sky, has been imprisoned in the earth, and his wrath bubbles as he pours it into these rocks, and then we foolish mortals have finally unlocked the wrath of the sky god by mining these rocks out that bear his name, uranium. And it's just stuff like that all throughout the book, and it is so cool. Those little moments where you get those, oh wow, that's why that's called that, or oh, that's where we get that thing. Oh wow. So I don't know. I loved that. I was like, this is so freaking cool. I'm so excited to see more of, I can't wait to read more of this and kind of, well, I can't wait to finish it. I'm so close to being done. And I don't think, like, it doesn't cover all of the myths contained in like Homer's The Iliad or Odysseus or like the Odyssey. Those are pretty common, and I think what Stephen Fry has done is he's taken this and he's now kind of retelling the stories that you wouldn't have heard otherwise. Oh, I should put the torches out first. Yes. No, this is okay. Cool. A little concerned there. What? Why are we having words in the song? This is supposed to be a calm playlist, not. There we go. I just want to hear the background noise. Okay. I lost my train of thought. That's what happens when you try to multitask. Tons of. So they don't really cover the well-known stories because you can read about those in the actual stories. So you can read these classical texts and get these pretty big myths. But sometimes he does cover them. And I like what he does is that because Greeks. Okay, so like modernly, we're saying space stuff we find in the Earth. I don't know how uranium is formed, but it sounds like space stuff, the sky, buried in the Earth. Yeah, and that's the fun part of this, is that it's up to interpretations, right? So it's not space stuff. The understanding of Uranus is sky. So it's the rage of the sky, which is where we get the name uranium, according to Stephen Fry. Not necessarily exactly how uranium was named, but if you look at some of the elements, they actually have traces of, well, you can conjecture that they have traces in Greek mythology. Like, for instance, plutonium is named, plutonium is a very precious metal, and it's named after the Roman version of Hades, Pluto, because Pluto is the version of, is the Roman name given to Hades, is Pluto, and plutonium is very valuable, very rich. It's one of the very good metals. So I don't know. Saying space stuff we found in the Earth. I don't know how uranium is formed, but it sounds like space stuff. The sky buried. Yeah, I don't know its true composition in terms of its actual composition. But I think it's named uranium because of. I think very well could be because of the sky. It could be because it's something space-like, but I don't think that's why. I think when you're assigning elemental names, I don't think you're worried about kind of where it comes from. I think it's just a matter of giving that respect. I mean, it's possible. I'm not 100% sure on that one. Before I lose my point, there's a thing I had to mention. Another really good modern, so we had Hades Town, which is a musical, if you like musical theater. Very good story. There's other plays as well. Theatricality, you can't, there's tons of great stories themselves. I would recommend Eurydice, which is a play. It's a very fun play, but it's the story of Eurydice as told by Eurydice's perspective. So usually you focus on Orpheus and him writing the music and then making the mistake that he made and doing all that. So it's nice to see it from the other side of the story of Eurydice and what Eurydice had to go through before Orpheus showed up. So that's another really good story in terms of a difference of perspective. I like Hades Town because it really gets the audience involved and gets them excited about things. So that's another good recommendation. In terms of other media and methods, if you have, I don't know, can you access it off of a computer? I think you could. Webtoon, which is a service that gives you, I don't think you can. I think it's built for the phone. So I don't think you can view it from a website, but maybe you can. Webtoon is a comic website, like a website made specifically for artists who are not comic book, but comic drawers. So they draw panels and you explore the panels. You scroll up and you read the stories. There's tons of really, if that is something that you like, of visual story or visual graphic novels. Not really graphic novels, but more, visual storytelling and seeing that through panels and stuff. Webtoon is amazing. They've got tons of stories on there. The artists are fantastic and very creative. Sometimes there's anything you can find. So if you want humor, it's there. If you want romance or comedy or anything else, it's all there. And they have a really good one that I was shown by a friend and I still read. Practically every week they come out with a new episode. But it's called Lore Olympus, and it's romantic, kind of sensual. There's a bit of comedy in there. There's a bit of an adventure, but it tells the story of Kore, or Persephone, as she's known, and Hades, right? So that whole story of Hades and how Persephone became the queen of the underworld, and kind of from that perspective. So it's another really good. And then this one is more. It's like the gods are living in modern times, but humanity is still ancient. it's a really cool spin on that whole story, and it doesn't really focus on anything else. It is specifically on their story and kind of the interactions between these gods. So it's a good, in terms of a modern approach to storytelling, that's another really good source of it if you don't like reading or listening to audiobooks. So, you know, the Greek mythology and Greek stories are all around us, and they're constantly retold. And I think that's one of the cool things about this book, is that Stephen Fry basically says he corroborates different sources, and he's like, well, according to, you know, there are some discrepancies in these different stories. So and so, you know, one of the ancient poets said it this way, but then in another story it's described as this way. I'm going with this version. So he kind of gives you a bit of a timeline as well, and saying, hey, there are discrepancies in the stories, and they're not 100% the same across every single author. So they change even within the storytellers, and that's kind of interesting and cool to see that you know, that the stories are, and because the whole point of the stories isn't necessarily to provide an accurate history. Like, I'm not taking it as historical fact, or not necessarily theology, like the like a philosophy to live by, because Greek philosophy, right, of these books. So I'm definitely reading these. I'm definitely listening to this book more because I find Greek mythology to be fascinating. It's so much fun. It's epic. There's all of this adventure and betrayal and all of these things going on. It constantly seems like the world is falling apart according to the Greeks. It's constant. Oh no, what's happening? What are we gonna do? What's the truth? How do we move forward? Okay, I'm gonna count to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. So it just, the Greek, I mean, even in theater, like, I'll tie it back to theater because that's what I do. Often, we'll do, ooh, I need to put another one down here, don't I? Yes, I do. We'll often do, like, the Greek plays, which are the earliest form of theater as to date, often credited with the original theater, thanks to Dionysus, the god Dionysus, and his celebrations and festivals of merriment and gaiety. Not to be confused with gaiety, which is the earth. Greek stories are, I don't want it to snow. Greek stories are often told all the time, like, especially in theater, like Agamemnon, Eurydice, and Orpheus. We've also got Oedipus. Most people know the story of Oedipus, of, you know, accidentally falling in love with his mother, which is a really tragic story. Electra, the libation bearers, the women of Troy, I think it's called, the women of Troy. There's tons of stories, and they're all recorded in the theater, and it's considered Greek style theater is very specific in its approach. It's like, this is the ultimate style of theater, and if you can do this, then you can do anything, is kind of the way it's taught in the collegiate settings. It's like, it's even harder than Shakespeare because there's chorus and there's these grand speeches and monologues. It's not hard to follow, and the stories are pretty easy, but yes, it is very verbose because it was translated, and now we're kind of translating it again. So I enjoy the more modern adaptations of that. Like, Eurydice is written to be, it's conversational. It's written in every day, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see it, everyday common English. And some of the more ancient Greek stories are very hard to follow just because of their verbosity and the amount of difficult new words that you're having to go through, or listen through these grand speeches about how they describe the sky and their sorrow within their soul. So it can be a little tiresome to listen to and to watch. And I think what this book does well is makes it come alive and feel feel very relevant and feel very conversational. Like the gods talk, the gods talk in very fun voices, and they have definitely opinions, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then they'll turn around and they'll become very poetic, and then they'll switch back to, "Okay, and now I'm done. I'm gonna go home and sleep." So I really enjoyed that part of the book. I had a thought. There was this was a bunny trail. This was a down the rabbit hole. I said bunny trail and I got made fun of. Doesn't that make sense? Is it supposed to be bunny trail? I know you can go down the rabbit hole, like, watch stuff on YouTube and then go down the rabbit hole, but I thought there was a term that you could say, like the bunny trail. Like you go down the bunny trail and you get distracted. Maybe I'm crazy. I'm not 100% sure. One of the other favorite stories that I've seen in the Greek mythology. Oh, that's where I was going with that. It's even different in its recounts. I was talking about this with a friend. That even in different stories, the gods have different opinions of each other and different temperaments. Like, all right, for instance, the story of Eurydice, right? The story of the story of Persephone and Hades, which is where we get the seasons. In case you're unaware of the story, most Greek stories are there, like most Greek mythology is there to give you an explanation for why the world is the way that it is, right? As most things, as most religions, as most philosophies are, it's meant to be an explanation of why the world works the way that it works, right? So, for instance, creation, right? Every different religion, every different belief system has a different version of creation that like the Greeks talked about it, about what the most ancient things are, and then as things move on, like, oh, I'll get to the point of the differences in stories, but the differences of different creation stories of mythology, right? They talk about the seasons, right? In Christianity, it talks about everyone usually creates the sun first. It's darkness, then light, then earth, then time, then seasons, and then kind of other things like that. Same thing with this. It was very much, all right, so it starts off with earth, or it starts off with darkness and earth and hell, and then it eventually, and things don't have time yet, so things happen out of order and everything else, and then eventually we get time. And then seasons only develop much later. Like, that was the problem that I had with the book, and that's why it's not more of a philosophy or mythology that I'm going to follow, because some of it's very weird. Like, for instance, when humans were created, according to the Greeks, Zeus is notorious for taking advantage of different creatures. Like, mostly women, dryads, anything that resembles a form he likes, Zeus will pay special attention to. So when he made humans, when Zeus charged Prometheus with making humans, he only made males. And Prometheus only made male versions of humans, and then later down the road, eventually when Zeus gets betrayed, he gets angry, and then he creates females to ruin humanity. And then Hera's not happy with that, so she makes women cunning and smart to defy Zeus, since he just did it. It's very interesting, very fun. Then that's where it's difficult. Like, we don't even have seasons on what is the early Earth until Persephone becomes queen of the underworld, because she goes down, she lives with Hades, they can't find her. Eventually they find her and they say, hey, you have to come back to the surface, and Hades has fed her a pomegranate and she eats 6 kernels of the pomegranate, and he says she has to come back to the underworld because anybody who eats food from the underworld is destined to return. So she ate 6 kernels, so she's supposed to stay with me for 6 months out of the year, which is where we get fall and winter, according to the Greeks. So, but before that moment, they didn't have seasons, which is weird, right? Because we function off of a cycle. So everything functions off of seasons, off of time, off of everything else. How did they not have seasons before Persephone became the queen of the underworld? What? Were they constantly in summer? What's going on? How does that? And it doesn't provide you with all the explanation that you need. It's just kind of a story to kind of explain where things come from, right? So we know we have seasons, and they say we got seasons from, Persephone going to the underworld every year. But if you think about it too hard and say, oh, hey, what happened to seasons beforehand, it's not going to make sense. You're going to be like, you're going to be very confused. All right, we have just hopping along the bunny trail. You could go down the rabbit hole for a shortcut, but slow and steady wins the race, otherwise you're mad as a hatter. That's actually one of my favorite quotes. You're mad as a hatter. My darling, all the best people are. Oh man, I'm glitching again. You can tell, see? I don't know if this will show up, but you can tell over here. See how you can see through the blocks? You're not supposed to do that. So here we are, and we're gonna wait for it to load. I thought Zeus was gonna be like, Prometheus, I have sex with this. No. So the story of the creation of humans is actually a really fun one, and it's written very well. It's written much like very okay. There we go. It's written very conversational. So Zeus comes in and kind of talks and says, "Oh hey, this is kind of what I want." Zeus is upset because he doesn't have a pet. Zeus is upset because all the other gods have other things and things that they can dote on and, that can pay attention to them, and Zeus doesn't have anything. So he basically gets together with Prometheus and says, hey, we should create little versions of ourselves. And then Prometheus goes and does it. And there's this whole symbology to it all. So Prometheus takes clay from the river, which is Gaia, so it's Mother Earth. He takes Zeus's spit, which is sky. He lets them sit. He forms the humans and lets them sit in the sun, which is fire. And then eventually Athena comes and breathes life into the humans, which is wind. So the original humans were made of the 4 elements: earth, fire, wind, and water. So and I was like, okay, that's some cool symbology there. But originally Prometheus made all of these different humans in all the different shades. So he made white, brown, red, yellow, green, blue, and violet. He made all of these different humans, and then he made them all in that specific kind. And then, in his excitement to see the humans, Zeus... Oh, wow. Look at that. We got an X-ray view of the house. We can see what's going on. He can't get to bed. Anyways, Zeus, in his excitement to show Athena his brilliant idea of his humans that he's developing, stumbles out of the bushes and accidentally crushes the green, blue, and purple humans. And Prometheus is very upset. He worked very hard on all of this, and here comes Zeus, who just stumbles in and destroys his 3 humans. And Prometheus is like, those are my favorites. I really like those humans, and now they're not here anymore. And Zeus is like, it's okay. These other ones will work just fine. Come on, let's get to it. So, which is interesting to me, who's thinking about it theoretically. What does that mean? Does that mean that the Greeks thought that there were blue, purple, and green humans? Is that something? Is that a sign that we were once visited by aliens, and the Greeks knew about it? Is that what's going on? Were the Greeks visited by aliens long ago, and so that's why they wrote in the mythology that there were green, purple, and blue humans? Or is Stephen Fry just coming up with something because he can do that as an author, right? Is this artistic liberty? And so he believes in aliens, and now he's trying to tell everyone else that there are aliens that look like us, but who weren't formed? Are they living secretly underground with Gaia? What is going on? Who knows the truth? Because I don't, and I have more questions than I had when I started the book. So that's... I don't know what happened there, sorry. Crazy things of must have been a cold. There was no seasons because Earth was surrounded by a thick layer of humidity, making tropic climate on the whole Earth year-round. Then something happened in the universe. The Bible calls it the flood. Yes. So that's actually that is actually really interesting because they also discuss that in the Greek version of the events. They also have a great flood. Yes, there are many visited by aliens. No font be logical about Fry. No font? No, don't be logical about Fry. It was aliens. Scientists back it up as well. Apparently Greek mythology was aware of that too. Yes. So this is actually really cool. I can't remember the exact word for it. But there was a... The way that it's described and the way that it's actually presented, I don't know if we talked about it last week or maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Regardless, there's been evidence that the Earth in the early days, was surrounded by a giant. So the atmosphere, as we know it, was still present, and we still had those greenhouse gases. But the atmosphere itself, there was actually a layer of water protecting us from outer space. So there was the Earth had its atmosphere, then a couple thousand, maybe like 100 or so miles above the Earth, above the air, was actually a layer of water, and this water was suspended above it, creating this closed environment and closed system inside the actual Earth. So we had a layer protecting us from the other things. That's why there's so much more plant life and more abundancy the farther you go in archaeological records. And the Bible talks about it in terms of Christian faith. It talks about when the flood happened, that the depths opened up and released springs, and the heavens like basically unburdened themselves. The heavens became unburdened. And so in the flood, in terms of what happened, right? How could it rain for 40 days and 40 nights and the whole world's flooded, according to the Christian faith? Well, that's not actually what happened. It's a way to describe, again, it's all of these things are supposed to be trying to describe an event that hasn't happened, that they don't know how it happened. And the understanding is when the skies released themselves, they released water, is actually referring to this layer of water that existed above the sky actually fell to the earth. So this entire layer of water that's completely encapsulated the earth and protected it from harmful rays and other things like that, which is where we get more abundant life. And partially also the reason, that's the reason we go into a great ice age, was because now all of a sudden we're not protected as much and we don't have that tropical climate. So when it talks about it raining for 40 days and 40 nights, yes, there probably was rain, there was other things, but there's also this giant layer of water that is falling onto the earth and making it completely flooded, which was, again, fascinating. The Greeks also, they place it in a different place in the timeline. I can't remember exactly. There's so many stories, you get lost. I forget half the stories half the time, because I'm like, where is this happening? What story are we on? Who's this character? I don't remember why they're important or other things. It's definitely worth another read for me. I'm gonna sit down and hopefully, well, I'd love to own a physical copy of this, because the audiobook is great, but I wanna be able to reference it, because I think there'd be a lot of fun things to come out of this. But the Greek story for the flood, they also reference the atmosphere and the layer of water in the sky, and Zeus does it. Zeus sends the flood because he doesn't like the humans. which is actually really interesting. He doesn't like the humans because something. Oh, he doesn't like Prometheus because Prometheus, as if you're aware of the stories, Prometheus actually steals fire, which is another point of illogical inconsistency. If all the humans on Earth, so they make the 5 humans, and then Zeus likes them, so he multiplies them and makes like thousands of males, right? All in the pigmentation of what we know to be humans now, and he like just duplicates them and makes thousands of them, and it's only males. And he basically warns Prometheus and says, do not ever give them fire, because if they have fire, they will rival the gods, and they will eventually surpass us and have no need of us. Which is interesting, right? And I think there's a greater point to be said here, that Zeus isn't afraid of humans having fire, he's afraid of humans making scientific discoveries, right? And I think that's the conjecture that is going there, that humans, if they are if they're intelligent enough, if they learn enough about how the world works, they will have no need of the gods, right? Because we know what uranium is. We know why there's seasons. We know that there's seasons because the Earth travels around in an elliptical orbit around the sun, and depending on how close we are is how we get our seasons. So we have no need now of the god. We have no need to know about Persephone or anything else, because we understand how it works. So I think there's a I think there's actually what am I thinking of? That's why I think that's the moral message of it all. And I think the Greeks understood that the more they discovered and learned about the world around them, the more they would need less of these stories to describe the way the gods worked and the way the world worked around us. Scientists back it up as well. Yes, I was actually answering your question to why there was no seasons. Yes, actually, and that tracks, because I believe Persephone was taken to the underworld after humanity was made. What was I saying? Oh, in the flood story, he gets mad at Prometheus because eventually Prometheus steals fire from Olympus, gives it to the human, and teaches them how to use it, and then they create a whole society. So before that, did they not have fire? Did they always just, have to survive in darkness and other things like that? It is later explained with Pandora's box, that there was no suffering, quote unquote. There was nothing to be worried about. Humans lived in peace, which was interesting to me. I was like, oh, okay, gotcha. So after that, I think there's a whole first generation of humans. Basically, Zeus creates Pandora, which is the first woman in Greek mythology, sends her down with this jar that he tells her not to open. And then she marries, I can't remember his name, but Prometheus' brother. Prometheus has a brother, and she marries him, and then one day she opens the jar and lets forth terrible plague and destruction on the earth. And then quickly seals it up and then leaves hope left in the jar. Ancient Greek Big Brother. Sheeple are easier to handle. Why do you think they burnt the Library of Alexandria? Guzzles coffee. Ooh, speaking of coffee. Let me guzzle with you. Coffee. Yes, sheeple are definitely much easier to control. Why do you think they burnt that? Yes, we have no records anymore. I think that's one of the greatest, well, maybe not the greatest, but that's definitely one of the biggest tragedies of history. It was the burning of Alexandria. There could have been so many things there that we didn't know. Maybe all the records of all the aliens that came. Pandora seems a lot like Lilith, not following the rules. This is another common theme that I've seen in these stories, and that's kind of what I like about the Greek myths, is that the gods, they establish very early on that no god can undo the effect of another god, right? So if there is one god who did a specific curse or did a specific thing, then no other god can overcome them. The other problem that is a consistency in all these stories is that the gods, like, they're not great. They're very jealous, and you can be serving faithfully to one god. Like, if you are dedicated to Athena, you can be working and, you know, making the best thing that Athena can ever do, and you're working hard at it. And then in doing so, you win her favor, and she's like all about you. You're clearly a good human mortal. But then you accidentally piss off Ares, who's now very upset with you, and so he decides to curse you. And there's nothing Athena can do because you can't undo the curse of another god. And that's a consistent thing in all the stories, is that, you know, one god will do one thing and then another god will get upset, and, you know, humans have to suffer for it. I was like, what? Why is this the rules? How is this possible? Why are they allowed to do this? Why do they hold themselves to a different standard than, you know, they hold humans? It's just, I found that very funny that's the way that they decided to make things work, is to say, oh yeah, nope, sorry, if you upset me, you'll feel the wrath, and there's nothing I can do for you, even though you did everything I asked you to. And then Ares will be very upset with you. Like, that's, there's a great little parable about that. And not parable, but whatever. A really good story in there about the gods and being jealous. Also, speaking of lost history, but no more, check out the movie Agora. It's about a Greek woman who discovers that we revolve around the sun right before the church comes in and burns the library. Oh, I see. So, actually, I'd love to see that. I'd love to get more into the Greek history and see that. So, nice recommendation. That's another good source. To finish up, let me just quickly wrap up the Greek flood story. Zeus sends a flood after everything happens, blah, blah, blah. Humanity is going. There's more men than there are women. Some people win the favor of some god. I can't remember if it was Poseidon. I think it was Poseidon. It would make sense if it was Poseidon, because, yeah, Hera was not happy with humans, and neither was Zeus. So Poseidon saves two people, and they're very old, but they've won the favor, so they get saved. Not like Noah on a boat, but they just, they get saved by getting magical water-breathing abilities, I believe. And then they go visit the Oracle at Delphi, and basically say, hey, we're the last humans, what do we do? And they tell them to throw Gaia's bones over to throw their mother's bones over their shoulder. And they're confused because their mother is dead and everyone is dead. What are they talking about? And then they come into realization, oh, she means Mother Earth. That's, everybody's mother. And so they start picking up sticks and stones, and they walk across a field and throw them over their shoulder. And then they turn around, and lo and behold, you have equal humans now. So there are 50% women because there was a woman throwing one half of the stuff, and 50% male because the male was throwing half of the stuff, which is how the Greeks explain why there's equal females and males, even though Zeus only created males in the beginning. So that's the explanation for why we have equal genders, equal amount of male and female. Technically now, see, this is an interesting point, because now we have more people who identify as other things. Oh, and that explains that. That's a fun. Yeah, let me jump to that. There is just a belief that what is his name? Hermaphrodite. Or I think he in Greek mythology is Hermaphroditus. Hermaphroditus, which comes from the name Hermes, which was his father, and Aphrodite, which is the goddess of beauty, and so that is his name, and that's where he comes from. And there was, Hermaphroditus was very beautiful. He was a male, and he was like insanely attractive, and everyone loved him. And then there was this one person who was just so infatuated with him, a woman, that she threw herself on him and basically demanded that the gods fuse them together, that their love is inseparable. And the gods grant it. They're like, oh yes, your love will be inseparable. And they're like, ha ha ha, you should have chosen your words more carefully. You will be literally inseparable. So then Hermaphroditus forms, and so now there is a man with both parts of both genders, and that's where we get hermaphrodites, is because it's literally two people fused together because she was, she didn't say the right thing. And I think Stephen Fry does a really good job of, providing some modern context to it all, of like, hey, the Greeks actually, didn't put this down, and they actually really valued hermaphrodites, and they were like, no, this is actually really, this is a good thing. Although the Romans then, didn't really care about it. Like Hermaphroditus in the Greek mythology was really cool, and for the Romans it was just another story that they had, and they didn't really praise him or say, oh hey, this is a great person, this is a great thing to do. So it's just interesting, the way the stories change, and the way especially in the Greek stories, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like free love, free expression. Gods not only, they weren't necessarily in traditional pairings of like a man and a woman. Gods, were men and men, women with women. It didn't really matter. It was just more of the attraction or the physical beauty or any sort of feat of like, oh wow, that was very impressive. You've won my favor. Zeus was the worst human, the worst god being in the stories. But because of him, so many things move forward. He's a catalyst for plot. That's how I will describe Zeus. Zeus, like, things get boring, Zeus is there. Zeus will make it interesting. Where is it? There it is. Put more torches down. So, that's Zeus. Lesson: be very specific in your prayers or wishes. Yes, that is actually a common theme in Greek stories. Is, hey, if you pray or request something, be very specific about what you request, because if you don't, you'll get quite literally exactly what you asked for. There's a great story that I was listening to last night about it, specifically about there's, I can't, not Eros, because Eros is an interesting, I'll get to Eros. Another god, another goddess, and she fell in love with this human, and this human loved her back, and they were, everything was going great. She loved him, but she had already loved one male before, and he had died in her lifetime, and so she was like, no, I can't lose this other lover as well. So she goes to Zeus and says, hey Zeus, I need a she says, hey Zeus. Sorry, she goes up to Zeus and says, hey Zeus, I have this lover and I need to ask a favor of you. And Zeus is like, no, okay, well, what's your favor? She's like, can you make him immortal? And he goes, oh sure, I can make him immortal. She goes, that's strange, I thought you would be upset. He's like, no, I'm not upset. Of course, if you love him, then absolutely, he should be immortal. So he makes him immortal, and then she comes back. They live, for a couple of years, and they eventually she wakes up one morning and she finds a gray hair on her lover. So she goes to Zeus crying and saying, what do you do? I asked you to make him immortal. And he's like, I did. I made him immortal. He will never die now. You didn't ask for him not to age. You just asked for him to be immortal. So he will never be able to die, but he's still going to age. And so then it continues forward on this whole thing. And eventually he gets so old that she can't even understand him. And since one god made him immortal, no other god can now make him mortal again, because Zeus is the only person with that power, since he bestowed that gift of immortality on him. So what she does is she prays to Aphrodite. Aphrodite answers a prayer and basically turns him into a grasshopper. And then he flies away, and he's a grasshopper for the rest of his life. So he's actually alive still, but he's a grasshopper now because he cannot die. Some stories really end on a like somebody was writing a story and then didn't know how to end it, so they just, you know, put something down. They're like, and then he was turned into a flower, and then he became a grasshopper because he couldn't die. The moral of the story is done, but I don't know how to finish this, so he became a grasshopper. It's definitely the way it felt to me when I was reading through it, or when I was listening. I was like, and he became a grasshopper, why? Like, his name doesn't mean grasshopper? Okay, whatever. Lesson, be very specific in your prayers or wishes. Like jinns. Do gods really have gender? Sorry, jinns. Yes, like jinns are very specific in their wishes. Which is weird because, you know, genies are also... Yeah, genies and jinns, they're, you know, they're the same thing. They're just different names. Right now, I'm actually on Midas. And Midas has shown great hospitality, and so Dionysus has... given him a blessing, and he said, ask for anything and I will grant you your wish. And then and then Midas basically says, I would like for everything I touch to turn into gold. And I don't think he's realized his consequences yet. I'll find out in the next chapter. Spoiler warning, I know how the story ends, and he eventually gets cursed with this thing where he turns everything he touches into gold. Alright, let's do a quick progress report. Kowalski, progress report. It's 1 hour into the live stream. Let's see how far we made. I thought I was going to be able to finish this much quicker, but so we're about... We did that one. Almost halfway. Not really. Close. But it looks good. We can... we should update the map. Let's go to sleep, update the map, and continue on these... the great Greek stories of mythology and mass production. There was a story. The other thing I found really interesting. Okay, so here's the map. Here's where we started. We started the world, or started this moment. Kaboom! Looks excellent. Why are there little red dots in those places? Is there something? Oh, wow! Look at that. It has these mushrooms on there. I thought that was empty netherrack, but that's actually just mushrooms. Okay, well, this map will be done soon. I love these little maps. It shows good progress. Okay. I also like that we kind of reskin, or at least, yeah, the saying nothing new under the sun, right? There's really no original ideas because everything's been done before in some way, shape, or form, and all we do is just recycle things and give it a different name. Like, for instance, the story of Psyche and Eros. Eros is the god, usually Cupid, right? Cupid, the god of erotic love, blah, 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 son of Aphrodite. So he, Midas would do great in the pandemics. Never touch your face. Absolutely. He would be able to provide everyone stimulus things by, you know, they'd come to him, he'd touch it, turn to gold, boom. Now you just need to find a place to do that, but that would cause inflation if we think about it realistically, because now we'd have an influx of gold, but then nothing to back it with. So then all of a sudden gold would become absolutely arbitrary because there'd be too much of it, and it would become as useless as, say, cotton, or no, not cotton. I'm thinking about Alf, like earwax or anything else. It would be just a common. We'd build things out of gold instead of having value behind it. So. Would it really be that great in the pandemic? Because then all of a sudden we'd be dealing with inflation. Nobody wants that. To say, okay, Psyche and Eros. It's a fun little story about he's sent to make Psyche fall in love. Aphrodite is very jealous of Psyche because Psyche's very beautiful and all the gods are jealous. And yes, to your point, I don't think gods have a specific gender. They are usually portrayed in Greek mythologies as having a specific gender, but they usually change forms when they visit mortals, and they can adapt anything. So I think that there is more of a discovery of, oh, you know, the gods can do whatever they want to. The gods can do anything they want to. They're not limited to what we understand to be genders because they can change whatever they want about themselves on a drop of a hat. So yes, that's to say that celibacy comes easy to him. Yes, celibacy. I wonder what you mean by that. I can't leave my. Okay, I can't leave my menu. I don't know what's going on. Throw this guy in here since he's empty. What was I saying? Oh, the story of Eros and Psyche is a really fun one because it mirrors, and Stephen explains this in his book, is that it mirrors very heavily of other stories that we're familiar with, like Beauty and the Beast, for instance. The story is very similar. There's clearly different things in there, and there's a different ending, and there's different characters. It's not, you know, things coming to life. But the main plot of the story about this woman being taken to a castle, not seeing her captor's face, and then eventually being, you know, seeing the face and getting the truth out of him, is really interesting how we recycle stories from Greek mythology quite frequently. There's another story that I just listened to and read about that, you know, Paramus and somebody else, the gods send a lion to tear this these two lovers are going somewhere, and this girl gets ahead of him, and then there's a lion that like scratches her and tears her coat off, and she runs away, and then the lion disappears and kind of goes to his own direction, and then her lover comes behind her and discovers the, you know, cloak soaked in blood, and he's like, I can't do this, I just need to be with my lover, and then, you know, decides to kill himself in order to be with his goes to be with his lover, and then his lover comes back and is like, oh no, my lover is dead, I guess I'll kill myself too, which is very much Romeo and Juliet from Shakespeare. So, and then Beauty and the Beast is very much the same story of Psyche and Eros retold as a Disneyfication. A Disneyfy. That sounds like a bad thing to say. Not like a bad word, but more of like he was Disneyfied. That sounds like abysmal. Anything else? No way to release the pressure. Yes. Midas should be a 2-minute story. He gets his wish, gets an itch, and then he's art till kingdom come. There it is. It's 2 lines now. Midas gets his wish, he gets an itch, and now he's art holding up a fish. I don't know, something like that. Yes. So there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun stories in here. So if you enjoy Disney, if you enjoy crazy stories about what's going on, if you have questions that you think you need answered, this is a fun book. It's a very fun read, very easy to read, very easy to listen to. Don't listen to it when you're tired. Just audiobooks in general, because, you know, you get sleepy and then you miss it, and then you wake up and you're 20 chapters ahead of where you were and you don't know what's going on. Then you have to go back and try to figure out which story you've heard and which one you haven't, and then subconsciously you feel like you've already listened to it because your subconscious has listened to it, but you don't remember listening to it. So don't listen when you're tired. It's very hard. Impossible. Shakespeare is a genius with no reference points. You take that back. No, I will not take that back. He is not. I mean, he is very smart, very intelligent, but, well, excuse me, don't you mean, what's his name? Marlowe. You mean You mean Marlowe, right? Because there's no such person as Shakespeare. Shakespeare was a fake name that Marlowe just used because Marlowe is Shakespeare. Marlowe died in a bar fight and became Shakespeare. That's what really happened now. Yeah. So I honestly, I'm absolutely in love with Greek mythology. It is very, very conversational, very good, very fun. There's all these fun stories that you can read. I'm out of bone meal. I have to go up to the other box to grab it now. So, absolutely would recommend. And I think there's quite literally a little bit for everybody in those stories. Like you can find answers, not answers. I guess you can find things. Are you turning your live stream into a book club? Yes, Marlowe. Turn it into a book club. Yes, actually, kind of. I don't know how well that would work. I've actually seen this moment before. This is really weird. I have really weird deja vu about this moment. Jacob Marley. Yes, Jacob Marley and the Rockettes. I actually would like to do a little bit more with this podcast, this live stream, just in general. I want to bring people on board and maybe get you some interviews with people. I'm going to be trying to work on that to maybe get some people in here who can talk about their knowledge about a specific subject, or also review some books and kind of move from book to book every single week and kind of have a discussion about any topics that come up. Like, if you have any questions about mythology, Greek mythology, ask away. I have read this book. I don't claim to be an expert, but nonetheless, there's a lot of stuff in there that's a lot of fun to discuss and to have a discussion about. This is meant to be engaging with you guys. So I really want to foster a kind of community here where we can talk about and discuss different books, different theories, while doing, this background work of making this beautiful world, and kind of see where we can imbue that and put that in there, just as a fun little background visual reminder for the different worlds that we create, the worlds that we read and the worlds that we create. So yeah, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep reading about different books. I think the next one, I've got another audiobook. I think the next one is about not conspiracies, but fraud and elections and the government, and just kind of, it's much more espionage kind of things, and I think there can be a lot of fun topics in that. I'm gonna try to get through probably a book a week. I got a little bit of a head start because I had a bit of a drive, so that was 6 hours of dedicated time listening. Throughout the week, I've tried to chunk out about 2 hours where I can put it on and listen to it in the background. I think I have an hour left of this book, and then I'm done with Mythos, and then I'll start on the next one, and then we can have a discussion next week about what the other book was about and what lessons and interesting topics are in there. So yes, absolutely, join the book club. At the end of the live stream, I guess I'll mention the book if you want to read it, and then you can prep for next week, and then we can discuss it. But now I have to be 2 weeks ahead. That's a bit of an issue. I have to now think and plan and do things. No, I spent a lot of time for this live stream. A lot of time gathering all the resources I need and making sure I had enough, and making sure that everything was, did all the math correctly of making the frames and making them look good and making everything count specifically. All right, here we are. We did it again. We're gonna count to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. Yeah. So no, I'm willing to do that. If you want to do that, let me know, and we'll make it a reality. We'll make it a reality stone. Ooh, speaking of, this is just a little not a red herring, but this is a squirrel thought. We'll call it a squirrel thought because it's acting like a squirrel in my mind. WandaVision came out for any person who has Disney Plus. I cannot wait to watch it. I will be watching it soon, and it looks fantastic, fantabulous. So I will be looking forward to seeing that. But it's supposed to be, it looks really good. From everything I've seen, it looks like Marvel knows what it's doing there, and I'm very excited to see that. I just wonder if this is just something we always do as humans, but create these stories with the mythology, right? We're always coming up with things, and we're always coming up with explanations for the world around us, right? Whatever that is, of like, oh, it snowed because I don't know, because this is one of my favorites, right? So this is another fun little myth, little legend. If you sleep with a silver spoon underneath your pillow, it will snow that night, right? And then, because not necessarily I used to do this all the time, but I have done this in the past, of where the forecast says that it's gonna snow, and you really want that snow day. So you take a silver spoon and you put it underneath, you clutch it in your hand and you put it underneath your pillow, and you say your little prayer, and you're like, I really want it to snow because I don't want to go to school tomorrow, and so I want to do this, and and then I think it maybe worked once, which would be very weird if it worked all the time, right? If every person who slept with a silver spoon underneath their pillow would get snow, I think the whole fabric would be disrupted, and we would be lost in a snowy wonderland of joy and hot chocolate and all these great things that we don't have because it doesn't snow every day. If you want snow, go north, because there's tons of snow up there, which can be explained by Boreas, the northern wind, who is flirting with the goddess of snow, and they have such a tempestuous, lively relationship that she's constantly dancing to the wind that he's providing. And so because she's dancing, her white dress constantly flakes off of her, off her body, because the music is so lively, because Boreas likes to, sing so loudly, so she's constantly shaking, and her dress is constantly shedding bits and fibers and all of that. So that's why we get snow. And Boreas lives in the north, so that's why the north has a lot of snow. I've just explained it. What do you think of that? That sounds like a logical explanation to me, is that, because Boreas is, rowdy and likes to play his music, and Snowa, we'll call her Snowa. Snowa wears her white dress, and it's not very well made, so it sheds. That's where we get snow. That's why it snows in the north. You really used to do that. Where's the silver spoon now? I'm not sure. I'm not sure where the silver spoon is anymore. It's somewhere. I don't do it anymore. I left that habit in the past. I've moved on. I've grown. I've adapted new ways of hoping that it snows, like going to the school parking lot and spraying water all over the cement so that it's a hazard to come into school, so that we don't have to go to school. I took life into my own hands, and now I am more crafty, you might say, about what I do and how I approach the things that I approach. My approachability has increased. No, I think there's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of fun things to do with myths and mythos, which is another interesting name of why mythos. Mythos is this is something from the book that was really cool, and is something that I'm more on board with for philosophies and for kind of things. In the beginning, they talk about right, that there was everything, and everything was condensed into one single point, and then there was a big bang, right? That's how we understand the universe to have come into existence. But they talk about that there was not that, but that there was they describe it as cosmos. And I really liked the way that Stephen defined it, and how the Greeks defined cosmos. Cosmos is this idea of everything that is, right? So that cosmos is this amalgamation of all the things in the universe, all the different things, and it's a consistency of everything that is cosmos. And so when you look at something and it's chaos, but it's also serenity. Oh, I forgot to put the other. It's chaos, but it's also stillness. It's all these different kind of like yin and yang. So it's like balance, but not necessarily exactly balance. It's more of everything that is cosmos, and that it can be chaotic, it can be peaceful, but it's just a matter of understanding that everything around us is cosmos. And I love that definition. There's some very, very good moments in this book where they talk about I really like Stephen Fry's literary flair to it. It just reads really, really well. He writes really good moments with like alliteration and and it's very subtle because he's not calling attention to it. It's just like he'll speak and he'll do the rhythm and get these like tumultuous times packed with prestigious divination, like, right? So all these big words, and they just flow very nicely and they make a lot of sense to the book. So I really enjoy that, and I think some of that, like the cosmos being described, is just a really interesting way of describing the universe around you. It's like, oh, cosmos, everything that is. So mythos is everything mythological, like mythos. All things mythical are contained and defined in mythos. Absolutely cool. But there are areas where there are questions, and they're okay to be questioning this kind of thing, because not every single time do you need explanations. Like, why can Kronos eat his children and then they still come out alive? Why is Zeus the king of the gods if he's not technically the firstborn? And Aphrodite is technically older than Zeus, and technically kind of a Titan. That's one of the hard parts for me. It's so hard to keep track of who's what and who's where and what's going on. There's so many names. They just came up with a name for everybody. And then, we got to a point now where for the last 3 chapters in a row, they've talked about a woman by the same name 3 different times in Greek mythology. That there's 3 different women all by the same name, which means white as milk. And there's 3 different versions of her. Not 3 different versions of her. There are 3 different stories with her with 3 different stories with 3 different people, all with the same name, and that gets a little confusing at times. I suppose. Definitely for me, I'm like, oh, I don't understand that. But it gets a little hard to track, I guess. Does he narrate his own book well? Yes, he does. He does a really good job at. I mean, I would hope so. I would hope that if you wrote a book, you narrate it well. I mean, not necessarily. There's some people who write books and don't like to read or act out the thing. But from what I read, or what I listened to, he's very good at his own book. It's very clear that he knows what's written and he reads it well. So definitely recommend audiobook by him and his book. I was saying something about different names. And I had another point, but I lost it. I don't remember at all. Yeah, it's just gone. Just out of the head, fluttered away. I don't know. I could read and learn more and more about it all the time. I want to now revisit it because back in high school, I didn't really care about the Odyssey. I liked the story, but reading the Iliad is so hard. Not the Iliad, the Odyssey. The Odyssey is such a dry, hard read at times. It's very poetic, but it just does not read well, or at least in my sense memory of being in high school, it didn't read well. Or I had a hard time reading it. So I think... But I know that that's actually the most purest form of translation of what the Greeks wrote. And it's almost, Greek mythology has almost now become its own living, breathing story. That since we have so many different forms of this, right? We have not necessarily that we needed a Greek book, right? We didn't need the book Mythos, because we have all these other records and we have all these other people who are writing these books about Greek mythology, but we still have another one, and now the stories have evolved and changed again. And so now is it, where is that line? Or what's the true story, I guess, as I'm saying. Is this retelling a better version? Is this a newer version? Is this, accurate, inaccurate? Because of this, and I think that's kind of the point. I think that's the point that, Stephen was trying to make in this book, is that the stories are passed down like you would sit in front of the hearth, and you would listen to these stories, and they'd be told to you, and then think of yourself as a child, and you're learning you're learning the way the world works. You're learning the way that the universe exists around you. It's not just it's sitting down and asking the question of, hey uncle, how did the bee get its stinger? I see a bumblebee and I got stung today by the bumblebee, but how did the bumblebee get its stinger? And then he tells you about the story of the bumblebee. And, this is actually in the book, and I thought this was really cool. The bumblebee, the gods set up Olympus after they defeat the Titans, and they decide to hold a big banquet. They're like, okay, we're going to hold a big banquet. We're the gods. We've done great. We're great. We're fantastic. Let's throw a feast in our honor. And then they announce to all the animals of the earth, they say, hey, come to this feast and prepare the best dish in the world. If you can wow us, the best dish will receive a divine blessing. We'll fulfill any request that you ask us, and we'll make it happen. So all the animals come in, they all bring their food. Everyone's got something different, and it's good. And Zeus and Hera go through it, and they try a couple things, and there's nothing particularly interesting to them. It tastes great, but then they get to this golden substance, and it's sticky, but it's also not sticky. It's smooth, it's solid, but then it becomes liquid, and it's golden like the rays of sunshine. And they taste it, and it's the best thing they've ever had. And they talk to this little tiny bug that doesn't look like it can fly. It looks like it's barely trying to fly, and it's just buzzing around. And its name is Melissa the bee. And the bee, they say, this is it. This is the best thing we've ever had. We'll grant you any request, Melissa. What do you want? And the bee tells Zeus, he's like, I worked so hard. This took me weeks to make this much honey. And I just cannot do it by myself because everyone keeps stealing my honey. And I would just ask, all I ask is to have a weapon to protect myself, and so I can make my honey in peace, and I can do that. And Zeus gets upset for the insolence of the bee, which didn't make sense to me when I heard it. I was like, why is he upset? That sounds like a reasonable request, right? To give it a weapon so that it can protect itself. But I think what happened, where the overreaching happened, is that Melissa the bumblebee asked to make a weapon that would be lethal to any person that she wielded it on. And Zeus is like, oh, you dare defy me, you insolent little creature. I'll give you a weapon, and it will be lethal, but it will not be lethal to anybody else but you. And then he blasted her with his god powers, and out from the butt of the bee grew what looked like to be a lance, and she was overjoyed, and she said, I have this. And Zeus warned her and said, this weapon is lethal, but not to your enemies, but to you. anytime you try to use it, it will destroy you. But because I've made your life difficult, I'll make your life easy. And then he says, you will never slave alone now. You will have tons of people that will work, and you will be the queen, and you will be the, it will be easy for you to do this. But if you use the weapon, you will die because it will be lethal to you. So like that, right? Can you imagine a kid asking this? It's bedtime. It's almost bedtime. You're at the fireplace. You've clearly had a good dinner. You've done the kid's done all his homework. Everything's good. And then there's a question of like, oh, hey, how did the bee come into place? And then imagine a nice fatherly figure sitting down and telling you the story of how the bee got its stinger. And there you are, and now you know, and that's why bees have stingers, because the first bee made honey. And actually that honey that the gods drank, then they said, this is it, this will be the food of the gods. So they took this honey, and Zeus basically blessed it and made it divine, and so that's ambrosia. That's where we get ambrosia. And then when it's fermented with different juices or other things, it's I can't remember the word. It's not ichor, because that's the blood of the gods. It's the ambrosia juice. There's ambrosia and ambrosia juice, is what Zeus said, and so now it's heavenly food, and anybody who eats of this heavenly food will be immortal. And so they only ate this ambrosia in heaven, or they really enjoyed it because it was the best food they ever had. And they eat other stuff, but it's not important that they eat other stuff because ambrosia is what makes you immortal. Right? I mean, and there you go. That's your explanation for why bees work, and a little bit of other history. That's fun. And we have that a little bit from time to time, but we've kind of lost this storytelling aspect, right? We've lost this kind of moment where we nectar, that's right, thank you so much. I was losing it. I was like, I can't remember what it's called. I know one is ambrosia, but the other one is something different. Yes, nectar. We've lost a bit of this storytelling aspect of this great thing about how to explain and kind of how the world functions, or how we think it functions, or just the joy of discovering and creating something interesting. So that's what it was actually really encouraging, and that's kind of why I got the book in the first place, was because Stephen was talking about the goddess Hestia, and this is an interesting thing about like the Percy Jackson series, right? And kind of the Greek mythology too. Gods in the Greek mythology get their power from like worship and servitude of these humans, right? So humans if they offer sacrifices and they believe in the gods, then the gods can have power. And if the humans ignore them and don't do anything with them, then the gods lose power. More so in Percy Jackson than in the original Greek myths, because it's not 100% accurate, because the gods are still very powerful and they can make you pay attention if you're not. So it's interesting though, the idea that there's a goddess, her name is Hestia, and she's the goddess of the hearth. She's the goddess of hearth and home, and basically like well-to-do where you live, right? And I like to imagine that she's kind of lost power because we've kind of lost this like fireside chats or fireside stories, and the tradition of taking time and just existing together in family. And that's kind of the interview. That's where this sparked into this whole idea of reading this book and learning about it. Because A, I like Greek mythology, and then B, in the interview with Graham Norton, Stephen Fry was talking about how we've kind of lost that as a generation. We've moved away, even like family dinner times. Again, this does not apply to everyone because everyone has a different situation at home and different things that they like to do. But in terms of just modern lifestyles, there's not really a time that people dedicate to sit together. Maybe Thanksgiving, maybe Christmas. I've got a really good friend who actually does do like family dinners for big events and special occasions, and I think that's really great. And I think it's really important to sit down and be present with the people around you and share those stories and share what your experience is like. And and have disagreements and have different moments where you're not 100% on the same page, or there are moments where you think Uncle Jerry's being a little weird because Uncle Jerry's just constantly weird, and he's talking about how robots are gonna take over the toaster and start a thing in his fridge. That's just Uncle Jerry. He'll be okay. So there are moments where we should try and bring that back, of those moments of storytelling. And that's kind of, to dive into not a deep personal thing, but more so of who I am. That's why I chose to do theater, and that's why I chose to pursue this education that I did, is because I want to tell stories. I want to engage people in these worlds of being, of sharing these different these worlds and having explanations, be it true or not necessarily to provide some sort of philosophy, although lessons are great to learn and lessons are great to pick out from whatever else, but to bring together that community and to kind of put everybody on the same page. People have asked, well, how relevant is theater? Theater's a dying art. We're moving to such a technological age that it doesn't really matter that people are in the same place and they're watching shows, because eventually everything's going to be digital. They talk a lot about oh, well, there's movies, so there's really no need for theater anymore because we can just watch movies. But this is one of my one of the big beliefs that I have, is that even in our modern age, even in all this technology that we have swirling around us and other things, I believe that humans will not be able to function. They will not be able to function without physical contact, without physical interaction, without some sort of interpersonal connection. I just don't think that because of, sure, Greek mythology, anything else, we are social creatures by habit. We thrive off of telling each other things and telling each other stories and looking at each other and connecting with, feeling each other's pain, all these things. It's just something that's innately built in us. And I really don't think that we can, I really do not think that we're going to get to a point where we're locked in this place of everything's virtual. I don't think that that's going to be the case at all. I think we're going to be continuing to do that. It's just a matter of of when it comes back and when things are when we pay attention to it again. Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit. But that's why, and that he basically said that in the interview of saying that that his book and his stories are meant to be kind of that fireside. You're sitting by the fire and you're getting an explanation for why Bumblebee has wings, or why uranium is named uranium, or where time comes from and how that all developed like that. And that was his goal. And so I was really excited about that, and I was like, oh, I want to read that, because I think that would sound really nice. That would be interesting, because that sounds like it's up my alley, and it absolutely is. And it was a great book, and I'm recommending it to you now. So yeah, I think that's and that's kind of the point of this channel as well, and what I want to do with this further down the line and in the future is to create community and to create things where we can share things like this. Like, for instance, this thing, right? We're working on something. It's quite repetitive right now, but it's necessary, because what I'm trying to tell is that there's a story, right? I'm trying to imbue this world with a story. So looking at this, it looks broken, right? So there's there's pieces of glass still remaining. There's vines growing all over it. It's not actually connected. If you come here in the middle, you'll see that the vines are keeping it together, that there's not actually a solid point of connection here. It's a constant thing. And same thing here, right? That it's not just building a wall, it's building a wall and then having the ground literally creep up into it and move along it, so that it's telling the story of that. That's what I like doing, and that's what I want to do, and that's what I want to do with you guys too, is to create a community and to talk about it and to discuss things or throw different theories in, and like, oh hey, you should put that in there because that would be a really cool thing to see, and then say absolutely, let's do it. So that's kind of my motivation as a creator and my motivation as an individual too. I'm sure I'm speaking to the crowd, but I'm also a part of a board game company that me and my friends started, and we do the same thing. We're trying to imbue these board games that we're creating, and even our Facebook page, with some sort of story, with some sort of thing that's engaging to content or engaging to public people, because we want to tell those stories. Rudyard Kipling has a lovely book explaining some animal stories. Just So book. I actually really like. That's interesting that you bring Rudyard Kipling up. That's one of the only things that I actually have memorized. See, now I said that, and now I'm gonna try to think of what it is, and I don't think I have it memorized as well anymore. But that's actually a personal detail. I used to memorize. I'll have to check the book out. Sorry, not meaning to ignore it. Yes, I'll check out the Just So book. I'll have to read it. Rudyard Kipling has a great poem in terms of if you're ever looking for encouragement or for just a good motto for your life. If by Rudyard Kipling is a fantastic poem. All throughout high school, I had it printed out and taped on the mirror in my bathroom. So every morning I would wake up and brush my teeth and read over the poem so that I would know like what, and it's a really good, it's about believing in yourself. It's about, not doubting yourself, about how you should go through life. You should, for instance, it goes, if, oh my goodness, I've forgotten it. If all the world around you is losing their heads and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can dream and not be tired of dreaming, and wait, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. Anyways, it continues on. Absolutely, go read it. It's a great poem. If by Rudyard Kipling. It's got such a good, powerful message about, bringing balance to yourself and going through and trying to find these different moments of, okay, this is what I should do and this is what I shouldn't do. So, I should be able to wait, but I shouldn't be so caught up in waiting that I'm just constantly trying to. Let me see. I need this. Yes. You should be waiting, but don't wait forever. You can dream and have all these different dreams that you have. Just don't constantly be so stuck where your heads are in the clouds and you just don't have any sort of grasp on reality. So that's a really, really good poem. So because of that, I think that book would be really good to read. Is about that Rudyard Kipling. And so I don't know. I think we need to lend ourselves to allow for more storytelling aspects, to be able to say, okay, hey, I'm gonna do this, and I'm just gonna explain something because of the way that I want to, like the whole Boreas and the snow thing. That didn't come from anything. It was all original thought. Let's zoom out. Let's take this moment now that we fell. Ooh. Oh, this is gonna look great. It's gonna look great when it's all done. The trees have moved, by the way. They moved from last time, so they're now accurately placed. Yeah. So that's my little soapbox. That's my little soapbox opera that I got for you in terms of my view on the world and what I would love to happen in this day and age. I don't know. And we don't tell stories like that anymore. We don't tell like epic stories of. I think it's because of science, but we don't like. There's nothing. I don't know. It seems like we've lost a bit of magic in the world. it feels like that way to me, right? With the Greek epics, we're always it's so mystical and magical and epic, and it was just which I'm curious now to think about. What was that like in their time? With all the stories that they had and all the different adventures that they had. And think about it, this was written because it might have actually happened. We don't know. We weren't there. But this was written by the Greek poets during Grecian times. So I'm sure they were having the same conversations. These are stories that didn't necessarily happen, but nonetheless people were writing them, and it became such a, fundamental belief to who they were and, why they did the things that they did. So for me, that's interesting. Is there a modern equivalent of the same sort of thing? Is there a modern version where we are creating some sort of bigger story to explain the way around us? Are we going to look back and talk about quarks and all these ways of explaining super scientific things about how the world around us works, like the fact that there are atoms and they're vibrating, and when you know the position of one atom, you know the position of the other atom, and so therefore you can kind of teleport? Are we going to look back on this and laugh at ourselves, or not laugh at ourselves, but find it so intriguing how we decided to come up with atoms and everything else like that, because in actuality it's more of a manifestation of a fourth dimensional being, and that it's it's not actually the only reason that we're actually able to teleport anything, if we get to teleport, is because one interdimensional being is picking up something that we have and moving it to the place that we want it to. It's like, oh, you guys want to move that apple across the room? Here, let me help you. And then he moves the apple, and we explain it by, oh, you saw that atom, and the atom was there, and now the other atom was over there, and that's why it happens. And then later on we'll discover, like, oh, it was just fourth dimensional beings that were helping us out because they liked us. Why can't we have stories like that? Like, why are we writing crazy stories about how our world works now? Of, oh, everything, we're so focused on science. We're so focused on science and making sense, which is still okay. Don't get me wrong. I'm at war with myself practically constantly, because I love grand stories, like just over the top stories about mythology, stories about great adventures and battles and poetics and everything else. It's fantastic. The picture of Dorian Gray is another great story. It doesn't make any sense that this man has a portrait of himself and he never dies and he never ages, but the portrait gets older, and then their life is connected through this this devil pact or whatever else, right? Crazy stories, lots of fun. Frankenstein, again, these classic stories are fantastic. I'm like waving my hand in the air. You can't see it, but I'm really emphasizing every single book that I'm talking about to create a visual. I'm moving my hand, because placing blocks only takes one hand in this game. But we don't. So I love those types of stories. I'm also incredibly fascinated by science, right? And I just find it so interesting about, what was it we were talking about last week? We talked about time and time illusions and time dimensions and the fourth dimension. And actually, if you go back and find that, I believe it's at minute 39 or minute 49 of the live stream, like 49 minutes in. There's a great video I linked about explaining the world of dimensions, from the explanation of Flatland. I don't know if you guys have read the book or heard about the book. I'm gonna go to sleep right now. Okay, we'll go to sleep. Flatland is it's a mathematical farce, mathematical joke, written about the world of shapes in the 2D world. And so they talk about all these two-dimensional creatures that exist together finally actually get a visitor from the third dimension. It's a sphere that talks to them in the third dimension, and they talk. It's supposed to be a commentary on society as well as math, and it's a really fun book. We read it back in high school, or it was read to us in high school, which is weird because it's such a. I I don't know how popular it is. I've heard of it, and so I have a bias where I think if I've heard of it, that means everyone's heard of it. And then I find that to be not the case because, you know, not everyone is of the same breed, or same history. You know, everyone has different experiences. Anyways, great. It's a great thing. It's linked in there. I also linked the time illusions, the video by Vsauce at the beginning of the video because I referenced it. So those are great. I love those. Love talking about those. But that's another one of those things is that I really enjoy science. I really enjoy learning more and more about how the world works, how the universe is assembled and disassembled, or, you know, the physics of our realities and how they interact with each other. It's fascinating, and I love learning about that and making sense of it. And at the same time, I want to tell ridiculous stories about, you know, why snow happens, and I know why it happens logically, but why can't we also believe something else about how it happens and how it does that? In Judaism, there is a fourth dimension that is very similar to our third dimensional planet, but it's where the ascended masters live. In Jadeism, not Judaism, Jadeism, humans who achieved eliminate and reincarnate in order to guide humanity. But it's where the ascended masters live. Humans who achieved eliminate and reincarnate in order to guide humanity. Interesting. I really like, can't remember what it was, the egg story, the story of the egg, where everything we are, that every person on Earth is actually just one person. And all we're doing is we're reliving our life over and over and over and over. Okay, we're gonna count to 8. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. All right, and now we're ready. Actually, I need to check to make sure I did that correct as well, but that's okay. So yeah, it's hard in the world that we live in now. It can be difficult because we have such an importance placed on truth, right? We have so much of, like, I'm thinking like false news, all these other things of specifically wanting things to be true and not wanting things to be not understood. Does that make sense? So we're constantly enlightenment. Gotcha. I figured that's what I meant. Achieved enlightenment. Achieved eliminate. We're constantly concerned with what is true, what is accurate, because so much of our we got enough. So much of our existence is about discerning reality and wanting things to be accurate. So I think sometimes we can, but see, for me, this is placed in a different box. Like, I'm reading this and I'm understanding that this is not, that this could be the way it worked and it could not be. It's more of a story to tell some sort of lesson from the actual story itself, more so than it's supposed to be an actual religion to believe that, oh hey, that is 100% how the bee came to be. That is how the stinger on the bee came to be. There's no other reason. There's no other way that this bee got its stinger. It's not true. That's not accurate. That's again, you can have both things. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can say, oh, that's a really clever, that's why they happen in the first place. But then also understand that, yeah, probably it's just an insect that has its stinger because it has a stinger, and that's all it really is at the end of the day. I have more bone blocks? I thought I ran out. No, I have one more. Okay. I think we're gonna run out of bone meal. I might have to go get some more bone blocks. I also discovered I really need a bone meal farm because I'm gonna have to do this a lot. I'm gonna have to grow this blue stuff all over this map, so we'll have to figure it out. That's okay. So I don't know. I guess I'm in a position. Reading this book has encouraged me to find more answers. Not necessarily find more answers. It has encouraged me to seek out and to find enjoyment in the world around me and create stories that you can look at and you can pause and be like, actually that would be interesting if it worked that way. Like, actually it's inspired me to think about religion as a whole and the different explanations and the different things that are kind of similar in different religions. Not to say that I, lose faith in any sort of religion. Just more of just the interesting points of, everyone has different explanations for like what's going on. Like for instance, in the Greek mythology book, we get references to Hades, right? And they, like, why is hell, Hades, Sheol, whatever you want to call it, why is it always depicted in the earth? Or in another, it's kind of another dimension, but we always understand that, if the earth cracked open, it would lead to hell, right? The gates to hell. Oh no. It's okay. Right, we're always picturing it as in the ground. Because and then the heaven is in the heavens, or whatever, Shangri-La, whatever you want to call the good place, is always in the sky. It's just interesting that we associate that, right? But even in Greek mythology, we talk about Hades, and we still have this understanding that, or at least the Greeks had the understanding, and I've seen it in a lot of places, that there is, and with the Greeks though it's different. So I will say maybe I'm inaccurate. Hades is the underworld, right? It's the place between Tartarus and Gaia. It's a place between two worlds, and they talk about Hades and Elysium, right? Elysium is this idea that souls that are actually not too bad, not too immoral, would go down to Elysium in Hades. And Elysium is a place for souls that are virtuous. And then if you didn't actually do anything wrong, but you didn't necessarily live a accurate life, like a good virtuous life, you would end up in the fields of asphodel, which are just, you forget everything, asphodel, which means forgetfulness. And they would put you down there and they'd wipe your memory, and then you just exist. Your soul would just sit there and just stand out in the fields, and you wouldn't remember your life or anything else. You just be blissfully in non-existence. And then there's the fields of punishment, which is where especially wicked souls go, and they're trapped down there forever. Which is okay. This is the myth of Sisyphus is one of my favorite myths. The way it was told, it was just hilarious. Sisyphus was, Sisyphus is the guy pushing the boulder, right? Constantly working on pushing this boulder uphill, and he can never do it because right before he gets to the top, it rolls down, and then he has to restart. Right? The story of Sisyphus's life before he died is hilarious. He's very good. He's very hot. He was very haughty. He was very he was kind of his own. He would play his. He's the master of his own fate, right? So he would do whatever he wanted to, and nobody could tell him otherwise. He continued to take what he wanted and continue, blah 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 blah, right? So imagine this guy, right? So this is kind of what Sisyphus is, and he's working on this, and he's doing what he wants to. Eventually, the gods get upset because I think he pissed somebody off. He did something wrong. I think he performed well in a competition, and one of the gods got upset. Like, I think he was very athletic and was very good, and so he participated in a tournament and won the tournament, and Apollo got very upset because it was his tournament and his games, and he didn't want anybody to win them because he wanted to win them, or something like that. So he gets mad, and he sends Death, Thanatos, to go kill Sisyphus, like to show up and say, hey, you're coming with me. So he does that, and Sisyphus outsmarts Death. Like, they say that he cheated Death, right? But the way he did it is hilarious. Death shows up, and the way it's written in the book makes it very conversational. Oh, I forgot to put torches down. Why didn't anyone tell me? Okay. Big dumb. Sisyphus, Death shows up at Sisyphus's door, and is basically like, I've come to, and then the way Steven writes it is fantastic. He's like, sorry, who are you? He's like, I'm Death, the bringer. I was like, oh, okay, well, can you keep it down? I'm trying to sleep. He's like, you can't do that. I am here to collect your soul. He's like, oh, God. Okay, right, give me just 1 second. Like, what do you mean? What do you need? He's like, I put these handcuffs and drag you to hell. He goes, oh, well, you know, what if I don't want to put the handcuffs on? He's like, I can't. These are handcuffs that will trap you forever, and then you will only Hades himself can take them off. He goes, oh, really? It's like, well, I don't believe you. He goes, no, they only Hades. Is like, well, you know, put them on. Let's see how it goes. And Thanatos agrees to it, puts on the handcuffs, and then can't get them undone because only Hades can take it off. So what happens is Sisyphus is like, okay. So he locks Death in a closet. And he's like, all right, cool, great. This is fantastic. I'm gonna go now. And so Death is locked in Sisyphus's closet for a while. And eventually the gods start to notice because everything in the world is falling apart because no one is dying. Ares gets very upset because everything's just falling apart. Everything's falling apart. No one's dying. Everyone's basically become immortal, and so they get angry with him and they find Death and they say, okay, well, we're gonna have to deal with Sisyphus. And in the meantime, Sisyphus is gone. He's got himself a wife, and he knows that the gods are coming after him. He knows that, oh no, the gods will, they're gonna want payback for what I did. So he instructs his wife to, when he dies, to not bury him, but to throw him out in the street. And she goes, no, I can't do that. That's against our traditions. He goes, no, just trust me, just do it. So they find him, they scorn him, and they say, you're dying. He goes, okay, I'll go down and I'll die. So he goes down to hell, to Hades. He goes across, he gets to the thing, and Hades isn't there, and he's left Persephone in charge, right? So Persephone is reigning supreme at the moment, and so she's taking care of business, and he shows up to her, and he's all tattered and bruised and everything. Oh, is this empty too? Oh, it is empty because I've done the two things, yeah. All tattered and bruised from his body being left on the street, and she's absolutely repulsed. She's like, oh, whoa, what's going on? Ew. Like, who are you? What do you want? He goes, I'm sorry I look like this. It's just my wife. She was so evil. And she's like, what happened? And he was like, yeah, she hated me, and this is the reason I look like this. She didn't even give me a proper burial. She just threw me on the street, and she was a living nightmare. Like, I hated my wife. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, that sounds so off. He goes, I have a great idea. He's like, how funny would it be? Okay, hear me out, Persephone. How funny would it be if I went back to the surface, you brought me back, and then I tortured her until she died? I would get to go back, and I should go back. I should torture her. I should make her life like she can be my slave or something. I'll come back. She'll be so shocked to see me alive that I'll come back and I'll demand all these things, and she'll be my slave, and I'll be like, hey, how dare you do this to me, and oh, how great would it be too if I came back younger? Like, that would be because she did this thing and she was so evil. Yeah, I should come back younger than her, and then I should torture her for the rest of her days. And Persephone's like, yes, that's a great idea. I'm a god, I approve. You go do that. Because for whatever reason, Persephone was not aware that this was Sisyphus. So he comes back to the surface, and then him and his wife rejoice, and they're great, and all the gods are very upset. Very, very upset, because they're like, he just beat Death, and now he beat Death again because of what you did. And she made a promise, and so now this promise is enacted, and she's like, I can't, there's nothing I can do. It's gone into order. I can't cancel it. So eventually his wife dies. And so then when his wife dies, then the order is no longer true. He just promised to outlive his wife. So now that he's outlived his wife, death comes for him again. He's like, yeah, let's go. So he goes down to the underworld, and Hermes, the great trickster god, escorts him down to Hades. Right? He's going down, and he's like, "Oh, hey, I'm helping you through this. You've clearly been down here before, and you really outsmarted us. You're a smart guy. You've outsmarted us gods. This is not an easy task to do. You're clearly very intelligent." And he goes, thank you. He goes, "Okay, well, so here we are. You've got, I can lead you straight to the fields of Elysium, or since you're so smart, since you're so intelligent, we want to offer you immortality. But you have to do something before we offer you immortality. So see this giant hill over here? You have to push this boulder. You're a strong man, you're intelligent. You push the boulder. If you can push the boulder all the way to the top, then at the very top you'll see the exit. You can walk out of Hades, and you can become immortal. Or I can lead you straight to Elysium right now, and you can live, forever in paradise." And this is kind of showcasing the pride of humans, and he's like, "Oh, well, absolutely, I should go push the boulder because I want to be immortal because I think I'm so smart." And so he takes the task, and then the rest is history. Stephen does a really good job of talking about it, is that he believes that he can still do it. Like, he firmly believes that he can get that boulder up on the hill, and as soon as he does that, he'll become immortal and he'll live forever. And he believes it with all of his heart, and that's why he's still there pushing the boulder. It's just a matter of, I just gotta do it, and then I'm gonna be immortal, and then everything will work out perfectly. So the moral of the story: don't be proud. Don't be too proud of this technological terror you have constructed. So I don't know. It's just fun to get those contexts of the story, because we know the story of Sisyphus. We know that he's a person. Sisyphus, yes, like Sisyphus. I'm bound. Yes, okay. We know these stories. We know what they are, and I think that this book does a really nice job of making it fascinating, making it interesting, and putting some more character and some more explanations for why they happen, right? Because in the original stories, it's very, very dramatic, very great. It's very, oh, this is what happens, and then he tricked him. But this one made it feel very much more human, which I enjoyed. I think I am out of I'm out of bone meal. This is a problem. I have to go get more bone meal. But I think we'll finish laying it out, and then we'll go grab a bunch of bone meal and then come back. So, yeah. I enjoyed, there's so many fun stories. There's some really wacky ones too. Like the explanation for some things. Like the way Dionysus was born, for instance. This was another really weird one. Dionysus, I'm just recapping stories at this point. Yeah, we're just talking about the different Grecian stories that there are. Dionysus. Let me move this so I can get at least 2 rows of this in here. Okay. Dionysus. So Zeus fell in love with this girl. Don't remember her name. That doesn't really matter. But falls in love with this mortal, or he comes to this mortal. She's a priestess in his temple, and she's in the river bathing. So she's taking a bath. Zeus sees her, and he's like, "Hey, how are you?" He's dressed up as a man, and she's like, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing? Stop that! Stop looking at me." He's like, No, it's okay." She goes, "I'm a priestess of Zeus. I work for Zeus." And he goes, "Oh, I know, I'm Zeus himself." And she's like, "Oh, what are you doing here? Like, doesn't your wife know you're here?" And he's like, No, I'm here for you." And then she does fall in love with him. She's like, "Oh, you're so beautiful, but I love you, and I want to be with you forever." And he's like, "Okay, well, I love you too. I actually do. I do find you attractive. I do love you. Let's, I can't come back all the time because I'm the god, but I'll come back once a month to see you." And so every new moon he comes back to see her, and so she knows that, and so she preps for it. Well, eventually Hera finds out, because she's the wife. Wives are not oblivious. I'll just tell you this now. smart people. They're not about to get fooled by your tomfoolery. Nah, that's not the way it works. They can smell it. They know what's happening. There's another sense that happens. You're not gonna get away with that. So, as always, Zeus doesn't get away with it because Hera knows and she can tell. Zeus probably going on with something, and it's probably this woman who's constantly waiting for him every month. So she dresses up as somebody else and shows up to her. And she's like, "Hey, hello. I'm such an old woman. How are you? What are you doing?" She's like, "Oh, I'm waiting for Zeus to show up." And like, Zeus, you don't even know who that is. Like, I'm like, no. I'm a priestess. I've done all these things. I know it's Zeus. I was like, well, maybe, I mean, that sounds kind of like Zeus, but it could be any god. Any god can transform into an eagle and, fly away. That doesn't necessarily, but like, that's Zeus's symbol. And she's like, no, it's probably not Zeus. You should, are you gonna see him again? And she goes, yeah, he comes to me every month. And there's moments through the story where you're like, what are you doing? Like, if there was a person who showed up to me and started asking me very specific questions about a specific thing, I don't think I would be answering those questions. Like, if something happened, like, oh, hey, what did hey, Michael, what do you think about, X person? And I was like, who's asking? And I was like, oh, well, no, especially a stranger. Like, I don't know. I believability stretched, it's a parable more so than it is an actual story. Anyways, so she confirms and says, yeah, I see him once a month. And the disguised Hera goes, oh, well, you should, the next time you ask him, you should ask to see him in his true form. And she goes, because I don't think you're seeing Zeus, I think you're seeing somebody else. You should definitely ask him to show himself to you. And she's like, okay, well, I'll do that. And that's what happens. So Zeus shows up, and it's one of those things that we humans in these stories do, is that she asks, she asks him, do you love me? He's like, yes, of course I love you. What's wrong? What's going on? How's our child doing? Because she has a child with Zeus, and it's growing in her stomach. She goes, oh no, it's great. It's fantastic. I love you, and I just need to ask one thing of you. He goes, well, I love you too, so anything you ask, I'll grant it. She goes, you promise? You promise you'll grant me anything? Which is another thing of the gods, because the gods are pretty dumb too, that they just agree to things without thinking about them. The humans say, hey, can you do this thing for me? And the gods say, well, okay, I'll do it. Can you make me a promise? And the gods are like, yeah, sure. Any promise I want? Yeah, any promise you want. And then the gods are always surprised by how the humans ask them for things that the gods don't want to do. Anyways, so she makes him promise, and then he's like, yes, of course, I'll do anything for you. I'll grant you any one wish. And then she says, okay, great. My wish is for you to show me what you truly look like. And he's like, no, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. You don't want me to do that. And she's like, no, but you promised. He's like, no, you really don't want to do this. And she goes, no, you promised. Which I'm like, if the god of thunder, if the god of lightning, if there's the god most terrible, right, is doing these things, why? If he's telling you he doesn't want to do it, and this isn't true, why are you pushing him? Be like, oh, or why not explain the entire story? Humans are dumb, and that's that's okay, but that's where we should learn our life lessons from all this. It's like, come on now, okay, well, and he's like, okay, I guess I'll do it. And he shows her, and she like splits in half and like burns, and everything's terrible and awful, and like Hera's cackling in the distance, everything's going bad. But then Zeus plucks the fetus, and again, so tail over, right? It should be tail over. Girl gets a little ambitious, listens to Hera, doesn't ask questions, decides to really try her luck and do this thing. Then, when she finally gets her wish, she gets burned to a crisp because, of the radiance of Zeus. End of story. That should be where it ends. No. It takes the I don't know how to end my stories turn, and things get really weird. So Zeus plucks the embryo from her womb while she's dying, stabs himself in the thigh, and tears his thigh open. sticks the embryo into his thigh, and then sews it shut. 3 days later, he goes... I can't remember where he goes. He goes to another location, and he asks for Hermes' help. Hermes opens his thigh, and out from his thigh pops Dionysus. And then Dionysus is trained with some god who's very good at, drinking, and then that's where we get Dionysus. Why doesn't the parable just end at the other point? No, there's gotta be just some weird, wacky... Does it make a difference that Dionysus was born from a thigh of Zeus? No, makes no difference whatsoever, but that's the truth of what happened, and that's what's forever now recorded in the history of Greek mythology of how Dionysus came to be. Again, maybe not. Maybe this is just Stephen Fry's interpretation, or maybe it's only one account, and the only account for how Dionysus was born, it was that he was born from the thigh of the god after he showed himself to a girl. She split in half, and he saved the baby, and then inserted it into his thigh for it to develop. And some things just and I think the wackiest parts are what keep you engaged throughout the entire book, because there's some moments where you think you know what's about to happen, and then it just turns completely on its side, and you're like, I had no idea that's how that was gonna go. Like when Hermes was born, there was a moment he was born, and typically, like, gods don't work off of a sense of time. They can do whatever they want to, and they can, they grow at a very weird rate compared to humans. So he was born. This still has stuff. Yes, excellent. We're getting to the end. We're getting to the end of the Netherrack, which is exactly what we need. So Hermes was born, right? Hermes was born through I think it was a human mother. It was some god and a human mother, and they were working. She basically went in exile because I think it was Zeus. It was Zeus and this girl, and Hera was out to get them, so they had to go hide, and they hid in a cave. And she gives birth to Hermes. Well, he comes out talking and walking, and I love Stephen Fry because he's British, he's got an accent, he does great voices for the entire audiobook, and he comes out and Stephen just reads it. He goes, "Oh, hello, mother. Yes, it's I, Hermes. I'm going out because I see some cows in the field and I'd like to bring them back." And she's like, "I don't think you should leave." He goes, No, it's all right, mother. Please believe me, trust me. I know exactly what I'm doing. All right, I'll be right back, mother. And I just love that that's the way that he voiced Hermes. And so Hermes is always talking like this. It's like, yes, of course, mother. You have no need to worry. And so it's just funny that he comes out talking in a British accent and fully walking, fully capable. Hermes goes down to a field, steals Apollo's calves, which are happen to be grazing by, and then he goes back and basically feeds his mother and teaches her how to cook good soup. Apollo finds out, he gets upset. And this is just a really weird, gruesome detail that Stephen included, which was fine. It was just oddly very gruesome. Apollo is the god of prophecies and like divination, so he knows, he's blessed with what they call second sight, so he can see kind of the future. And he finds out that his cows are missing, and so he goes to find out like what happened, and the way he does it just was very boggling to me. And I think people still do this. They basically, he goes to a field, he catches a raven. I think it's a raven, or it could be a different bird. So I think it was a sparrow or something like that. So he catches a bird, he rips the bird in half, and then reads the future from the entrails of the bird. And it's like very gruesomely described as to how this happens. And I was like, was this absolutely necessary, Apollo, to do this? Like, couldn't you? I was like, okay. So finds it, goes to this cave. It's been 1 day, right? So this baby is now 1 day old, still a baby, and he hears music. He sees dead cows. He puts 2 and 2 together. He gets very angry. He storms in, and the baby's like, oh, hey, everything's fine. Don't worry. It's all good. I only needed 1 cow. And he goes, what do you mean? And he shows him the first lyre. Basically, Hermes invents the lyre and gives it to Apollo as a gift. Like, here, it's yours. I'm your brother. Take me to Olympus. He goes, who? What are you talking about? I was like, I'm your brother. I was born of Zeus. I'm 1 day old, and I'd like to go back to Olympus to say hello to my father. And it's just, it's really, I think he does a really nice job of making this story very much, feel like these characters are coming to life, right? So Hermes is super sharp, super quick-witted. He's always there with a joke. The entire dialogue, he's just sharp as a knife. But the fact that it's a baby that goes and gets cows and is somehow able to fashion a lyre, which is a guitar on his first day of being alive, and then what? There's just some moments where you're reading the story and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. And I had to stop what I was doing and listen to the entire story because I was like, wait, what? He was a baby and he came out a baby and this is what happened? I'm so confused. So yeah, in terms of hard left turns, it's a fun little thing to read for hard left turns because it's so full of them, and it is terribly exciting and enticing to do. I love it. Okay, we did it. You see that? That story finished our netherrack, so it's now completely placed down. We need to get bone meal still and finish these last couple sections, and then we'll be good to go and do that. Where are we at? Oh, we're out. Oh, ooh. Well, I think we're already at time for the live stream to be done. Where's the middle of this? We'll count to 8 one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we can go here. Excellent. Yeah, I think we'll call it here. I will work on the walls on my own time, I think. Just because this is, well, we'll take another, we'll take a look from the top, and then we will see the progress. I know this was just border work, but we'll make some buildings next time so that it's actually, does that line up? Yeah, it lines up. Okay, excellent. Everything's lit up. Everything's built. I think everything's lit up. Let's double check this. Let's go up there with our map, take a look, and then we'll call it good for this week. Boom! Look at that. Now that looks very good, very decent. Okay, up we go. Here we are. And there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections left. Okay, so I will work on that. So here we are. Let's move that out of the way. So I will work on these walls, I think, because I want to get these walls done. Yeah, I'll do that off camera. So I'll finish up the grass. We'll make it all netherrack on the outside. I'll finish up the walls before next week. So we'll have the walls, and then I'll go ahead and plan the buildings. And then next week we'll build some buildings up in this Sky Village, and we'll try to make it some themed a little bit way. And in terms of book club, I can't remember. I'm gonna check the name of the book real quick before I sign off. I believe it's called The Sentinel by Lee Child, and Scott Brick is the narrator. Jack Reacher, Lee Child, The Sentinel. So I will be listening to that. If you want to tune in and do that as well, go ahead and read that book, or come prepared for questions about the government and some conspiracies around us. All right. that's what I got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm working very hard. There will be, I don't like that. There will be more content coming to the channel soon. I'm working on it. I'm about 20% done with another video coming out soon to you, and it will be coming out again soon. Did you get that? It's coming out soon. The video that I have is coming out soon. And then we'll be back again next week for another Brotherland live stream. And then maybe we'll finish the village and we'll move on to a new project, a new thing to do. So yeah, guys, you've been great. I'll catch you on the flip side. I'll see you when I see you. And I wish you all a good rest of your Sunday and a good MLK day tomorrow. Go support ourselves and our country, because we need it. And we appreciate you. All right. Adios, guys.